No reply is the most brutal reply. Think about it. Not anger, not insults, not shouting, not paragraphs of explanation, just silence. You've been there. Someone ignores you, someone provokes you, someone treats your time and your worth like they are disposable. Everything inside you screams to answer back, to prove your value, to shout, "You won't treat me like this." And yet every time you do, you step into the trap they prepared. Because that's their entire game, to pull you into a cycle of reaction. They don't need to win an argument. They just need you to keep playing. And here's the paradox that almost nobody admits. The more you reply, the more powerless you become. Think of the last time someone ghosted you. You waited, you checked your phone, you replayed conversations in your head. Hours turned into days, and suddenly your peace of mind depended on whether they would type a single line back to you. That's not love. That's not respect. That's psychological warfare. And the cruel truth? Most people lose. They text again. They beg. They explain. They justify. They hand over their dignity in exchange for crumbs of attention. But let me tell you something. Most people will never dare to say out loud. When you give 0 replies, you destroy the entire game. This is not about being cold for the sake of cruelty. This is not about childish revenge. This is about reclaiming your power through Stoicism, about mastering the one thing that manipulators and attention seekers cannot handle, your silence. Because silence is not empty, silence is full of meaning. It's a mirror that forces the other person to confront the void they created. It's the sound of dignity, echoing louder than any desperate explanation. So it's the refusal to dance when someone else plays the music. Let's get brutally honest. Most people are predictable. They explode when ignored. They break down when they feel abandoned. They try to fight their way back into attention. That predictability is why they are so easy to control. But when you respond with nothing at all, you become unpredictable, untouchable, free. This is where Stoicism separates the strong from the weak. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The modern translation, you don't control whether they text you, but you control whether you answer. And here's the punchline, answering is exactly what they want. 0 replies is exactly what breaks them. Picture this. They send a vague message. "Hey, how are you?" After weeks of silence, you see it, you feel the pull. Your brain invents 100 stories. Maybe they miss me, maybe they changed, maybe this is the closure I've been waiting for. But deep down, you know it's bait, it's not love, it's a test, so you do the unthinkable. You don't reply. What happens? The test backfires. The manipulator is forced to face their own emptiness. They expected control. They expected weakness. They expected you to crawl back into their script. Instead, your silence rewrites the entire story. And the best part? You didn't have to lift a finger. You didn't have to scream. You didn't have to waste energy. One move, 0 replies, and the entire game collapses. Stay with me until the end of this video, because I'm going to show you why silence is the most brutal answer, how 0 replies become your greatest weapon, and why the ancient Stoics considered absence, indifference, and discipline far more powerful than any emotional explosion. If you've ever felt humiliated by being ignored, if you've ever begged for attention that never came, if you've ever replayed a message bubble on your phone like your life depended on it, this is your moment of truth. From today on, your silence will not be weakness. It will be your shield. Your silence will not be avoidance. It will be your power. And 0 replies will no longer feel like loss. They will taste like victory. Remember this phrase. 0 replies, they will taste their own game. This is not just philosophy. This is a new standard for your life. And if you dare to apply it, everything changes. If you want more brutal truths and Stoic wisdom every single day, subscribe right now and join this movement of silence, strength, and absolute freedom. They don't want you. They want your reaction. That is the brutal truth nobody wants to face. Every unanswered text, every sarcastic comment, every passive-aggressive silence, it all has one goal: to make you explode, to make you chase, to make you prove yourself. And the illusion? You think that replying, explaining, or defending yourself restores your dignity. But in reality, every single reply is another rope around your neck. They pull away. You feel abandoned. They ignore you. You feel invisible. They test you. You feel you must pass. So you react. You send the long message. You ask what went wrong. You demand closure. You fight for recognition. But here is the paradox. The more you fight, the more you prove their power. Your desperate need to be acknowledged becomes the very weapon they use against you. Imagine it. You're running after a bus that never stops. The more you run, the more ridiculous you look to those inside. They watch. They smirk. They feel superior because your effort confirms their control. That's the illusion. They never intended to let you in. They only wanted to watch you chase. And if you think this is only about relationships, think again. The same trap appears at work, with friends, even online. A boss dismisses your idea, knowing you'll scramble to justify yourself. A friend leaves you out of plans, expecting you to beg for inclusion. Strangers drop baiting comments not to debate, but to watch you lose your composure. The pattern is everywhere. They thrive on your predictability. And here's the Stoic lightning strike. If you need their reply, you are not free. If you need their validation, you are not strong. If your peace can be stolen by the absence of a text, then your peace was never yours. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. The modern translation: you don't control whether they text you, but you control whether you answer. The truth is, most people don't even see the trap. They call it love, or loyalty, or respect. They pour themselves into it like water into a cracked vessel. And the more it leaks out, the more frantically they pour, convinced that one more drop will finally fill it. But it never does. It never can. That is the great illusion, believing that effort will fix what was designed to keep you weak. And the cruelest part? The moment you stop running, stop pouring, stop reacting, you begin to see something unsettling. You realize the silence you feared wasn't empty at all. It was hiding something far darker, a system that feeds on your need to respond. And once your eyes adjust to that silence, you start to notice the hidden machinery behind it. The rhythm, the hooks, the invisible loop pulling you back into the same humiliation again and again. Weakness rarely announces itself with noise. It moves in silence. It disguises itself as effort. It hides beneath loyalty. It calls itself love while draining the very core of dignity. At first it begins subtly, a message left on seen, a call unanswered, a sudden coldness in tone that shifts the entire balance. The mind interprets the silence as threat, and the body obeys. The hands type explanations, the voice rehearses justifications. The heart beats as if survival depended on being acknowledged. The cycle is set. The first stage is justification. Long texts, careful words, endless explanations. The effort is dressed as maturity, but in truth, it is submission. Each attempt to clarify surrenders more ground. The second stage is overcompensation. Jokes, attention, extra affection, exaggerated demonstrations of care. A desperate attempt to prove worth, to cover the silence with noise. But noise never replaces respect. The third stage is waiting. Time stretches into obsession. Hours dissolve into staring at a screen, replaying imagined dialogues, analyzing tone, searching for meaning in the absence. The mind becomes chained to a device, enslaved by anticipation. Then comes the poisoned relief. So a short message arrives, cold, vague, calculated. It feels like a drop of water in a desert. Gratitude takes the place of anger. The cycle tightens its grip. The one who withheld now confirms their control, without effort, without sacrifice, without cost. Ignore, justify, overcompensate, wait, repeat. This rhythm corrodes self-respect with mechanical precision. The cruelty of the cycle lies in its simplicity. No aggression is required. The absence itself becomes the weapon. Silence becomes the trigger. Distance becomes the leash. And every reaction strengthens the chains. The Stoics called this slavery of impulse. Epictetus declared that no one who is mastered by desire or fear can ever be free. In this cycle, every justification feeds desire. Every overreaction feeds fear. The game repeats until dignity is consumed entirely. The one who ignores grows stronger without effort. The one who reacts grows weaker with every move. One side dictates the tempo by doing nothing. The other side exhausts itself by trying to fill the void. This cycle thrives on the illusion of resolution. The mind whispers that one more message, one more explanation, one more demonstration of value will end the tension. Yet each new attempt extends it, each new effort is swallowed by the void. The pit never fills because it was designed to remain empty. True cruelty hides in this design. The cycle feeds on predictability. It turns devotion into humiliation. It transforms care into a stage where one actor performs endlessly for an audience that never applauds. Breaking free requires the shattering of this illusion. The weakness is not in being ignored. The weakness is in answering. The wound is not their silence. The wound is the obedience it provokes. The moment of rupture arrives when justification no longer leaves the lips, when overcompensation no longer disguises itself as care, when waiting no longer imprisons the mind. In that instant, silence changes sides. It ceases to be their weapon and becomes your shield. And that shield prepares the ground for the most decisive act of all, the refusal to answer. Silence is often mistaken for weakness. The world teaches that strength means fighting, arguing, proving, explaining. Yet nothing devastates more than the decision to do nothing at all. The invisible blow begins when the reply never comes. No explanation, no justification, no closure, just silence. What looks like emptiness is, in truth, the sharpest knife. It cuts without being seen. It destroys without leaving fingerprints. This blow is not announced with noise. It doesn't arrive with raised voices or violent gestures. It arrives when the screen lights up and the reply never leaves your fingers. The silence travels back through the connection and suffocates the ego of the one who expected control. The ego feeds on predictability. It feeds on the certainty that you will defend yourself, prove yourself, chase and beg. The invisible blow destroys that certainty in a single strike. Suddenly, the rules of the game are rewritten. The manipulator loses their script. The power shifts without warning. The ancient Stoics knew this power. They understood that the strongest strike was not the sword, but the refusal to be moved. To remain unmoved in the storm, to remain unshaken in provocation, to remain silent when every impulse demands reaction. That is the invisible blow. Imagine a fire burning in arrogance, expecting fuel. Every past reaction was gasoline, but now the fuel is gone. The fire flares violently for a moment, then collapses into ash. The invisible blow is not delivered by force, it is delivered by absence. The silence works slowly, like poison. At first they laugh, at first they feel superior, at first they believe you are still trapped. But as hours turn to days, as their bait receives no bite, as their hooks remain untouched, the poison spreads. The silence begins to eat their confidence. The certainty they once had dissolves. The invisible blow humiliates without a word. It exposes weakness without confrontation. It forces the other side to look into the mirror of their own emptiness. For the first time, they realize the game only worked because you played. And now the board is abandoned, the pieces are frozen, the stage is empty. There is no greater cruelty than indifference. Anger gives attention, rage gives energy, hatred gives importance. Indifference gives nothing. Indifference erases existence itself. The invisible blow is indifference weaponized. Those who believed they owned your reactions now suffocate in the void. Every moment without reply deepens the wound. Every second of silence echoes louder than 1,000 words. The absence becomes unbearable because it is no longer weakness. It is judgment. The invisible blow is the verdict of dignity. It declares you are no longer worthy of my voice, my time, my energy, my presence. Nothing is said, but everything is understood. And here lies the brilliance of Stoicism. The greatest strike requires no movement. The greatest victory requires no noise. The greatest revenge requires no confrontation, just silence. Strategic, deliberate, merciless silence. The one who thought they could provoke, test, and control is left stranded. Their own mind becomes their punishment. They replay conversations. They wonder about your thoughts. They crave the chaos that once kept them entertained. But nothing arrives. The invisible blow does not give them war. it gives them nothing. And nothing is worse than war that never comes. This is the cruelty of silence. It doesn't just reject the provocation, it removes the battlefield entirely. The soldier arrives ready to fight, but the arena is gone, the weapons are gone, the enemy is gone. What remains is emptiness, and emptiness is the heaviest burden. The invisible blow doesn't just end the game. It exposes the truth. The game never had power. The power was always yours, hidden in your decision to withhold. The enemy fed on your energy, and the moment you stopped feeding them, they starved. Every second of non-reaction is a strike to their pride. Every hour without answer is a wound to their ego. Every day of silence is another nail in the coffin of their control. The invisible blow is the loudest silence, the coldest fire, the sharpest weapon. It destroys not by what it does, but by what it withholds. Once the blow lands, everything changes. The manipulator no longer looks untouchable. The silent one no longer looks weak. The game flips upside down. Power shifts in silence, and the world realizes nothing is more terrifying than the one who refuses to reply. And from this silence, a new standard begins. The brutal break is not a scream. It is not an insult. It is not revenge in the way the world imagines it. The brutal break is silence so sharp that it cuts through pride like glass. It begins when the expected response never comes. Not a word, not a signal, not even the smallest hint of acknowledgement. The one who believed they had power suddenly feels the void. The game collapses, not with explosions, but with the quiet erasure of interest. Silence now becomes strategy. Indifference becomes a weapon. Distance becomes punishment. And what once looked like absence reveals itself as domination. This break is brutal because it refuses to negotiate. No blocking, no confrontations, no theatrical exits, just disappearance. The vanishing act transforms the entire battlefield. The enemy finds themselves screaming into an empty arena with no one left to fight. Every provocation dies unanswered. Every attempt to provoke chaos drowns in stillness. The brutal break leaves no traces of reaction. It is cold, deliberate, and merciless. The impact is devastating. First comes confusion. They expected the old pattern, the defense, the explanations, the desperate attempts to prove worth. Instead, nothing arrives. Confusion twists into doubt. Doubt corrodes into insecurity. Insecurity mutates into obsession. The one who once controlled the tempo now feels powerless. This is why the brutal break terrifies. It is not resistance, it is absence. It does not oppose, it erases. It does not fight, it refuses to exist in the arena. The Stoics mastered this art. They understood that no enemy can dominate a man who refuses to hand over his mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is not to resemble the aggressor. The brutal break embodies this wisdom. No mirror, no reflection, no response. And yet the silence grows heavier with time. Hours turn into days, days turn into weeks. The void spreads like a disease. The manipulator returns with vague messages, subtle provocations, desperate attempts to re-enter the script. Each attempt is sharper, louder, more chaotic. But silence remains. The brutal break devours their confidence. It makes their tricks useless. It transforms their arrogance into humiliation. The one who once laughed at your dependence now drowns in their own. This is cruelty disguised as discipline. No insults, no revenge plots, no dramatic acts, just the refusal to give oxygen. The brutal break is like sealing a flame inside a glass jar. At first, the fire burns brighter, frantic for survival. Then it flickers. Then it suffocates. Then it dies. Nothing destroys the ego faster than being met with indifference. The brutal break hands them the mirror of emptiness. They look, and they see nothing reflected back. They see their own irrelevance staring at them. The brutality lies in its simplicity. Nothing was done. Nothing was said. And yet everything changed. Power was stripped, dignity was reclaimed. The game was ended without lifting a single finger. The break is not temporary. It is not a pause. It is the drawing of an invisible line that cannot be crossed again. It is the declaration that no voice, no plea, no provocation will extract a single word. In relationships, this break transforms the dynamic entirely. The one who once mocked your silence now feels crushed by it. In work, The colleague who ignored your contribution now feels the sting of your absence when solutions no longer arrive from you. In daily life, those who thrived on your reactions discover a cold truth. Without your energy, they are nothing. The brutal break is more than silence. It is execution without visible violence. It is exile without a goodbye. It is judgment without a trial. The manipulator tastes their own game, and the bitterness is unbearable. They stagger, they reach, they call, they try again. But the arena remains empty. The silence remains unbroken. The brutal break is absolute. It leaves scars not by words, but by the lack of them. It forces the opponent to face themselves, to sit with the echo of their own emptiness. No one to argue with, no one to manipulate, no one to dominate. Just the crushing silence of defeat. The brutal break is the purest expression of power. It transforms the victim into the untouchable. It transforms the manipulator into the desperate. It transforms absence into the most merciless form of presence. And once delivered, nothing is ever the same again. The silence has been delivered. The brutal break has shattered the script. But the story does not end here. What follows is a storm of tests, each one more venomous than the last. They cannot accept the silence. They cannot endure the void. So they launch their counterattacks, dressed in messages, gestures, provocations. At first it comes subtle, a vague "hey," a meaningless emoji, a harmless photo dropped into your feed. Nothing direct, nothing solid, just bait. The silence is shaken, they hope. The trap is set. When the bait fails, escalation begins. Sarcasm appears, indirect phrases designed to sting. Cold remarks planted to trigger a reaction. The game mutates into psychological warfare. Not to reconnect, but to test if the chain still exists. The cycle of tests feeds on your weakness. Every vague message demands attention. Every indirect insult lures the ego. Every cold gesture whispers the same command: react. The manipulator thrives on confirmation. If one word escapes your mouth, the silence is broken, and the throne returns to them. But here lies the cruelty. These tests are not about love, nor reconciliation, nor closure. They are survival tactics of a fragile ego. Without your reaction, they starve. Without your attention, they collapse. Without your words, they face their own emptiness. The Stoics trained for this moment. Discipline was never about calm seas. It was about storms. Epictetus taught that circumstances do not break a man. They reveal him. These tests reveal the truth of who controls whom. Every unanswered message becomes a sword. Every ignored provocation becomes a shield. Every second of silence becomes a battlefield won without lifting a hand. Yet the resistance burns. The body aches to reply. The heart races to defend. The mind invents excuses to break the silence. Weakness begs for one word, one explanation, one chance to settle the unease. But breaking is surrender. Breaking is defeat. The tests grow sharper. They speak of your absence with bitterness. They mimic indifference to provoke curiosity. They appear suddenly, pretending care, pretending interest, pretending change. It is all theater. The silence exposes the actor. Resistance is not glamorous, it is brutal. It is the clash of impulse against discipline. The body screams, the ego trembles, but the silence remains. And with each test endured, the chains loosen. With each attack ignored, the ego of the manipulator withers. With each day of discipline, the throne is rebuilt under your feet. This stage is not the end. It is the purification. The fire that burns away weakness, the forge that shapes power. Only those who endure the tests emerge untouchable. The manipulator will keep trying. They will claw, they will provoke, they will disguise. But resistance transforms every attempt into humiliation. The more they try, the more they expose their dependence. The silence becomes unbearable, but only for them. This is the paradox of resistance. It feels like suffering for the one who holds the silence, but in truth, it is suffering for the one who tries to break it. Each unanswered attempt is a mirror of defeat. Each ignored test is another wound carved into their pride. The silence is not passive, it is active domination. It is war without weapons. It is victory without noise. And once the tests are exhausted, the transformation begins. The silence has resisted every test. The bait failed, the provocation collapsed, the mask of indifference cracked. And now, the most merciless phase begins. The cruel mirror. The cruel mirror does not show comfort. It does not reflect affection. It forces the manipulator to confront the emptiness they created. The silence becomes glass, cold and unforgiving, and in that reflection, they see their own weakness exposed. The mirror shows their desperation. Every ignored message echoes louder than a scream. Every attempt at control disintegrates without answer. The silence they once used as a weapon now turns against them. What they inflicted is now inflicted upon them. First comes the frustration. They check their phone expecting the familiar response that always came. Nothing. They reload the page, search for signals, try again with casual remarks. Still nothing. What was once certainty begins to crumble. Then comes the obsession. They replay the silence in their minds, hunting for reasons. They stalk for signs. They interpret shadows. They suffocate in the absence of confirmation. The cruel mirror grows heavier because silence multiplies itself in their imagination. Finally comes the collapse. The mask of superiority falls. Pride mutates into humiliation. Arrogance turns into dependence. The manipulator becomes the desperate, haunted by the reflection that cannot be escaped. This is the essence of the cruel mirror. It reverses the game. The once powerful controller becomes the powerless prisoner of their own tactics. The silence they imposed on others now consumes them like a poison they brewed for themselves. The Stoics understood this inversion. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed by the color of its thoughts. The one who lives by manipulation is painted by emptiness. The one who feeds on control is devoured by it. The cruel mirror simply shows the truth they never wanted to see. Externally, the change is undeniable. The messages grow longer. The tone grows sharper. The attempts grow more desperate. The one who once withheld now floods with attempts to break the void. Indifference is replaced by pleas, sarcasm by begging, silence by noise. Each move is a confession. The control is gone. Internally, the shift is even more powerful. The one who chose silence feels the return of energy. The dignity stolen by reaction resurfaces. The mind once enslaved by anticipation breathes freely. The cruel mirror not only exposes the weakness of the manipulator, it reveals the strength of the one who refused to answer. This moment is not gentle. It is ruthless. It is the revelation that silence was never weakness, but domination. It is the moment when absence becomes presence, when distance becomes impact, when nothing becomes everything. The cruel mirror does not flatter. It does not heal. It punishes. It delivers judgment without words. It forces the manipulator to witness their own collapse, and the more they resist the reflection, the sharper it cuts. Relationships crumble in this stage. The casual arrogance that once mocked now transforms into late-night messages, awkward attempts, desperate confessions. In work, the dismissive colleague suddenly notices the silence in meetings, the absence in decisions, the weight of not being answered. In daily life, the ones who thrived on provoking discover that their audience is gone and the performance means nothing. The cruel mirror strips illusions to the bone. It removes the mask, shatters the stage, erases the excuses. Nothing remains but the raw truth of dependence exposed. And as the reflection deepens, the silence evolves into something greater. It ceases to be a tactic and becomes an identity. The one who chose not to answer no longer plays the game. The one who begged for control is left alone, staring at the ruins of their own strategy. The cruel mirror is not revenge. It is revelation. It is not attack, it is exposure. It does not create humiliation, it reveals the humiliation already there. This is the final humiliation, the realization that all the power was an illusion, and that the silence they despised was always the ultimate weapon. From this moment on, the ground is prepared for something even greater. The birth of a new standard, an identity forged in the refusal to bend. The war of silence reaches its final act. The illusions have collapsed, the tests have failed, the mirror has shattered their pride. And now, a new standard rises from the ashes, the new pattern. This pattern is not built on reaction, it is built on control. It is carved from absence, forged in indifference, sealed with discipline. The one who once begged for replies now speaks a new language. Silence as judgment, distance as power, detachment as identity. The new pattern begins with unpredictability. Once, every move was expected. The long message, the explanation, the chase. Now, nothing is certain. No replies, no signals, no weakness displayed. The manipulator no longer knows where to strike because the old target has vanished. The predictable victim has become an unreadable mystery. Power lives in this mystery. Silence transforms into armor, coldness into authority. The one who masters the new pattern no longer reacts to provocations. Instead, they watch, they observe. They move when they choose, not when they are pushed. This is the true reversal of the game. The stage no longer belongs to the manipulator. The silence no longer serves as punishment. It serves as identity. The absence itself becomes the new presence, impossible to ignore, impossible to break. The new pattern thrives on discipline. It does not seek revenge because revenge still gives importance. It does not seek to teach a lesson because teaching implies care. The new pattern seeks nothing. It stands unmoved, untouchable, beyond the reach of provocation. Every ignored message is no longer a battle won, it is routine. Every unanswered provocation is no longer resistance, it is standard. The game is not paused, it is permanently erased. This permanence terrifies. The manipulator sends the final waves of attempts, angry words, desperate calls, false promises, sudden displays of affection. All collapse against the wall of silence. The new pattern is not temporary absence. It is a wall of granite, absolute and eternal. The transformation is visible. In relationships, the desperate ex who once mocked your silence now crumbles under the weight of your indifference. At work, the colleague who thrived on your justifications now feels invisible as your silence exposes their irrelevance. In daily life, the ones who provoked for entertainment find themselves performing to an empty theater. The cruelty of the new pattern is that it offers no explanation, no closure, no farewell, just the cold certainty that the stage is closed, the audience is gone, and the actor stands alone in darkness. For the one who adopts it, life shifts entirely. Energy once wasted on reactions returns as strength. Time once drowned in waiting becomes productivity. Dignity once surrendered is restored like a crown reclaimed. The new pattern is not a tactic, it is an empire of control. The Stoics lived by this empire. Seneca declared that the greatest wealth is a mind content with little. The new pattern embodies this truth. It is content with silence, it thrives in absence. It drinks power from nothingness. The one who walks in this new identity becomes untouchable. No provocation can pierce them. No manipulation can bind them. No silence can wound them, because silence has become their weapon. The new pattern does not simply end the old cycle, it buries it. The victim who once chased is gone. In their place stands a figure of stone, calm, cold, relentless. This figure does not wait, does not beg, does not explain. This figure does not bend to storms, it becomes the storm. And the manipulator, once proud and certain, is reduced to fragments. Their tricks collapse, their strategies dissolve, their ego implodes. The cruel mirror showed them their weakness. The new pattern forces them to live inside it. This is the ultimate reversal. The one who was once desperate now watches desperation. The one who once begged now hears begging. The one who once feared silence now delivers it with mastery. The new pattern is more than a shield. It is a throne. It is more than defense. It is domination. It is more than silence. It is a new identity forged in steel. The world may call it cold. The weak may call it cruel. The manipulators will call it impossible. But for the one who embodies it, it is liberation. The chains are broken. The script is burned. The cycle is destroyed. The new pattern is the final word. A life where no provocation holds power, where no silence brings fear, where no manipulation can ever touch dignity again. It is the point of no return. And once crossed, the silence will never belong to them again. It belongs to you forever. The journey has reached its final moment. What began as humiliation, reaction, and chains of dependence ends as liberation, silence, and unshakable control. The transformation is complete. Before this path, life was predictable submission. The phone dictated emotions. A single message decided the rhythm of entire days. Silence felt like punishment. Absence felt like death. Every ignored text was a dagger. Every cold word a storm. Every delay a prison. The victim begged, explained, chased, justified. Dignity was traded for crumbs of attention. Now, after this brutal initiation, the image has changed entirely. Silence is no longer fear. It is freedom. Absence is no longer void. It is authority. Ignoring is no longer weakness. It is domination. The chain has broken, and the one who once crawled now stands untouchable. This transformation is not subtle. It is visible in every area of life. In relationships, the one who once begged for replies now commands respect through silence. The manipulator, once arrogant, now feels powerless, trapped in the echo of unanswered words. Dignity returns like a crown placed on the head of a ruler. In work, the colleague who thrived on dismissing or provoking no longer receives the satisfaction of reaction. The silence speaks louder than arguments, forcing respect through composure, commanding authority without needing to raise a single word. In daily life, the energy wasted on chasing illusions has been reclaimed. Hours once wasted staring at screens now build discipline, health, projects, and purpose. Sleep returns, focus sharpens, strength grows. The transformation expands beyond relationships. It builds a new existence. The before was slavery of impulse. The after is sovereignty of self. The before was predictable reaction. The after is untouchable silence. The before was weakness disguised as effort. The after is power disguised as indifference. The problem that consumed millions, the endless cycle of dependence, humiliation, and manipulation, finds its solution in one principle: silence as power. The absence becomes the sword. The refusal becomes the strike. The discipline becomes the throne. The Stoics knew this path. They wrote of self-mastery, of control over one's own mind, of freedom that comes not from controlling others, but from refusing to be controlled. That wisdom now lives again in this transformation. It is no longer ancient philosophy. It is your life, your power, your weapon. Those who mocked your silence now tremble before it. Those who tested your patience now break under it. Those who once thought they owned your emotions now realize the truth. They were always powerless. This transformation is the ultimate victory. Not revenge, not violence, not confrontation. Just silence, cold and unbreakable, crushing and absolute. The weak will call it cruel. The manipulators will call it unfair. But for the one who lives it, it is liberation. The game has ended. The board is abandoned. The script is burned. The new identity stands tall, forged in fire, crowned in silence, untouchable in power. From this day forward, no manipulator holds chains. No silence wounds dignity. No absence creates fear. The silence now belongs to you, and in that silence you are free. If you want to go even deeper into this path of silence, power, and Stoic mastery, become a member of this channel. Twice a week, exclusive videos will give you brutal strategies and truths that you won't find anywhere else, because silence is not just the end of their game, it is the beginning of your empire.